Mark the 6th chapter. I'll draw a couple of pictures for you too. Is that all right? Okay, we look at verse number 45. Well, no, 44. Mark 6:44. And they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. Now these were laborers. They were working on the city of Tiberias, and they would work for 3 months on, and then they're off 3 months. So this was not slave labor. This was labor that was being paid for, just like a contractor would be today. They did eat of the loaves about 5,000 men. And straightway he, meaning Jesus, constrained. The word constrain means to force, that if you don't do it, I'll be greatly angry. I'll be upset with you. So he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go to the other side before unto Bethsaida, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. And when evening was come, the ship in the midst of the sea, and he alone was on the land. And he saw them toiling with rowing, or in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them about the fourth watch of the night. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Fourth watch of the night, he cometh unto them walking upon the sea, and would have passed them by, or bypassed them, but they saw him walking upon the sea, and they supposed that it was been a spirit or a ghost, and they cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled, and immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered. The very last verse of the book of John says that if everything was written about Jesus, all of his deeds, teachings, everything about Jesus, then there would not be enough books in the entire world to contain it. Well, now there had more books at that time than what we have in the world today, and in fact that was kind of the highlight of material scientific literature, that type of thing, in the first century. And so John didn't just pull this number out of thin air and to try to make it complement his sermon. He said absolute truth. All right? We have the Gospels, the four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Out of those Gospels, we have pretty much everything that we know about Jesus in the 21st century. And that averages out, not average, is absolute true. Of all of the events, teachings, and everything of Jesus, there are 129 different events. But of the 129 different events, 111 were also recorded by non-biblical writers. That doesn't make it any less authentic. I mean, they were there as eyewitnesses to the fact, and but it does give a great big golden star to the Gospels for recording the truth about Jesus. This particular story that we read about Jesus walking on the water, it was one of those events that was recorded by non-biblical writers. And this particular man who recorded these events, his name was Julius Gaius Septus. And we'll tell a little bit more about that in just a moment. Okay, pen. All right, this is Sea of Galilee, Jordan River coming in from the top. So this is the Sea of Galilee. The Jordan River comes down and then empties into the Dead Sea later on. The Sea of Galilee is approximately 8 miles wide. It is also approximately 13 miles with a depth. And at that time, at the time of Jesus, the depth of the water was about 400 feet. Now it's only about 180 feet, but at that time it was about 400. And what formed the Sea of Galilee and what formed the riverbed or the river valley of the Nile of the Jordan River was a underground volcano. And it still is there today, and you can go to Israel today, and you can see a number of plaques and that type of thing that talked about the explosion of the underground volcano that caused this to happen. When it was up here, this became the center of one of those earthquakes and kind of hollowed out a big hole that over the years, rain just filled the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is not an enormous body of water. It's a big lake, basically what it is. But on this side was the Golan Heights, and the Roman 7th Legion, 4th and 7th Legion, were headquarters over here. Now, up on this part, that city, and that's Capernaum. Now, the city of Bethsaida was right here, but they also owned more property. It was called like the Bethsaida Extension. And this is Tiberias, where the workers were working. And then in this area, there was a kind of a cleared, grassy, rocky area that they call the Bethsaida, and it belonged to Bethsaida. And so what Jesus told his disciples is that I want you to go over to Bethsaida. So the route would have been like this, and not straight across, but like this. And there is an event that takes place on the Sea of Galilee that no one can predict. Sometimes it happens this day and tomorrow, and then it doesn't happen again for 10 more years. Or it'll happen this day, it'll wait a month, happen again, then it'll wait 6 months, happen 3 times in a row, and then not again for almost 100 years. And the event is a natural anomaly that nobody understands how or why it works this way. The molten lava flows like a river underneath the Sea of Galilee, underneath the Jordan River, and into the Dead Sea. And this thing that happens is devastating. And what happens is that I'll show you another picture. Okay, we're cutting like that. Okay, this is the top of the Sea of Galilee, and over here is the eastern shore. And over here is the western shore, city of Tiberias, right here. Now the depth of the Sea of Galilee at this point is about 3 feet on both sides. And then that's relevant for about 20 feet out. And then it starts to gradually go deeper on both sides. And by the time it gets to this point, which is about a mile from the shore, then it's approximately 20 feet on both sides. And then all of a sudden, the bottom drops out. And that is the Sea of Galilee. And this is the depth that is now 148 feet deep, which at one time was considerably more. Now, underneath the bottom of the Sea of Galilee is the molten river of volcanic rock, molten metals, and it's flowing all the time. Now, the Sea of Galilee is a wonderful fishing lake, probably the best in the Middle East, maybe with the exception of the Red Sea. But this Sea of Galilee's floor, they had developed a kind of a rock cushion, and it's made out of cooled off lava and that type of thing. And it creates a cushion of about maybe from 3 to 6 feet thick. And that then allows fish and anything else to be involved with fishing the Sea of Galilee and to be involved with what goes on there. Now, from here, you have some foothills that go up. And then at this point, it has some tremendous mountains. Now, on the east side, that goes up immediately. And then your Golan Heights are over here. And these foothills are, they are about 1 mile away from the shoreline is the foothills, and this is where the city of Tiberias is located. And then from this point to the higher mountains is another 2 miles. And so the shore and the center would be about 4 to 5 miles from that point, from the higher mountains to the center of the lake. Now, most of the boats that do the fishing, they are in this area, and this is called the deep. And this is called the depths here. So you have the shore, the deep, and the depths. And this has some tremendous fishing in the area, and you can spend your whole working life, if you were a fisherman, working this without any difficulty. But then there's this anomaly, this thing that happens that cannot be, you can't prepare for it. You don't know when it's going to take place. No one has any magic formula that say, okay, we better get things together because tomorrow the earthquake's going to hit. No, none of that happens. But what happens is that for some reason, this crust at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee breaks open. The pressure builds up from the volcano, underground volcano, and then all of a sudden, it breaks this rock crust that's protecting the sea, and this huge monster gas bubble is forced up through the water, and then it breaks onto the water or out of the water, and it forces, and of course it's boiling hot, and it forces the colder air out when it hits the surface. And that colder air very rapidly is pushed aside at gale force, probably 70, 80 miles per hour. And then once it hits the foothills, it circles back around. And this one hits the Golan Heights, circles back around, and hits with all of its fury in the center of the Sea of Galilee. It happens very quickly. And like I said before, and I can't emphasize this enough, without warning, you can't predict it. But we know this, that once this devastation hits the center of the lake, in any ship that's out there, whether it be a large one or a small fishing boat, anything that's out there will sink within a matter of 5 minutes. Okay? And so it's something that is scary to get out on. In fact, when last time Paula and I were on the Sea of Galilee, she was telling me, she says, what if that hits while we're here? But the last time this anomaly did hit was in 1967. Okay? And what had happened is that the Syrian army, this is the 6-day war, in June 2nd through 8th. The Syrians were over on this side. The Israelis had a camp over here. And so what they were going to do is during the night, they were going to transfer their troop carriers across the lake, across the Sea of Galilee, and surprise the Israelis on the other side, Tiberias, which what they did. So they got into the ships. Nobody knew where they were and what was going to happen because it was a military secret. And they got out into the middle of the lake, and this thing hit. And there were 11 Syrian troop carriers sunk. There was also 2 gunboats with it that sunk. And I'm not saying God fought for the Israelis, okay? But, you know, if you look like a duck and you fly like a duck and you smell like a duck, I'm not saying you're a duck, but you know, good possibility. And so through on what was intended to cause the maximum destruction, turned the tables on the Syrians. And they never tried this thing again, whether it was the Yom Kippur War or any of the wars that are going on right now. And so let's go back here to the original drawing. Okay, Jesus sent the disciples away. This area here is the foothills, and these are the mountains. And so Jesus sent the multitudes away, and he told his disciples, and he says, you're going to make me very angry if you don't do what I tell you to do. Get in the ship and go to Bethsaida. Now, this was not a little fishing boat like you see on some of the medieval paintings. Okay, this was a ship. It was a ship that had oars and rowers. And this was a military transport for the Romans who was going from one side of the Sea of Galilee to the other side. And they have 3 decks of rowers. You have the top one, which are called oarsmen. And they work on an 8-hour shift. They work for 8 hours and they're off for the rest of the time. And the second level of oarsmen, they're called oar servants, and they work 12 hours on and they're 12 hours off. And then the bottom level are the bond servants, bond slaves. They never move. They sit right there where they're chained, and they will die at that location. They're never allowed to, they're fed right there at their seat, and if they have to go to the bathroom, well, that's it, they're home. And so they have to sit there 24 hours a day doing their work while all the filth from up above drops down on them. Paul was a bondservant. And Paul, half of the New Testament is written by him, probably the most godly man that we have ever heard about or read biographies for, subjected to the most defiled, the most degrading position in the world. But yet he did it because he was totally dedicated to his Lord, Jesus Christ. And today we see this type of thing. We say, Lord, I'm really worthy for your blessings because look what I've done for you. Look at all the various things that we accomplished, and it wouldn't have been done except for me, Lord. You realize that? Well, if anyone could brag about it, it'd certainly be Paul. And he being a Roman citizen, it was actually illegal for him to be in that position as a bondservant, but he didn't fight it. He allowed it to go on. And this is this type of ship that was on the Sea of Galilee. And now these transports would be troop carriers, basically. So they would transfer Roman soldiers from one side of the lake over to the other side, as well as supplies and all of that. Now, if the ship was not full, then you could book passage. And so if, let's say that a troop carrier held 200, well, actually it's 280 people that it held. So if you had like 200, you still had space for 80 more people, and you can book passage on that. And this is what Jesus did. He booked passage on the ship carrier on the ship, and told them to go over to Bethsaida. But what happened about midway right here is this storm hit. And it hit with all of its fury. Jesus was over here. He was praying in the high mountains. And where the high mountains begin to the middle of the lake was about 4 to 5 miles. Now, it's been documented over and over and over and over again. If you're in the lake, the Sea of Galilee, at the time that this thing hits, then within 5 to 10 minutes, regardless of what type of ship it was, the boat's going down. And that's pretty much a guarantee. Well, Jesus was here. So he was a good 4 or 5, maybe even 6 miles away from where the disciples were in this troop carrier going across. Now, the centurion who was in charge of the ship and in charge of the military that was going to the other side was Julius Gaius Septus, the one I told you about to start with. So he was an eyewitness because he was the centurion that was in charge of the ship. You know, my eyes are not the best, but I think even with a pair of binoculars, it would be difficult for me to see 4 or 5 miles in the dead of night, 3 o'clock in the morning, to see the ship that was struggling with the oars in the middle of this bad weather. How did Jesus get there? I mean, how do you cover 4 or 5 plus miles when you're in the mountains? There's no car. There's no bungee jumping. Nothing. I mean, how did he get there in time, knowing that ship had about 5, no more than 10 minutes, and it's going down? Jesus saw them struggling with the rowing, and saw them struggling with what they were trying to do, trying to get to the other side, just like Jesus had told them to do. But this storm that no one can predict, that no one can anticipate, hit them without warning. And Jesus knew, as well as everybody there knew, that 5 minutes from now, no more than 10 minutes, my disciples are going to be dead. And so we have Jesus over here. And even if he was able to get to the shore, he could ride an animal or wagon or whatever, and he was able to get to the shore. There's no one on the shoreline is going to rent him a boat in the middle of this storm to go out there. And so now he gets to the shore, and the boat is still over here, or the ship is over here. So how did you get there?
Welcome to Cubit Farm. Welcome.
I'm standing in the midst of God's Widow's Farm, which is actually a local phenomenon around here. And what you're seeing are the grapes that come from this farm. Before God gave us this acreage, originally 6 acres, now 10 acres, this plot of land was producing about 1 ton of produce or grapes or whatever it was producing, about 1 ton an acre. But what has made this so phenomenal is that we're now averaging between 9 and 10 tons an acre on whatever is planted. Now, you see the grapes here, but we also raise eggplant, both black and yellow eggplant. There's corn, okra, squash. We have tomatoes, apricots, mangoes, and with the onions and grapes and onions and garlic and leeks, and it's just phenomenal. And what we do, we produce this, and the widows get the first crops, and we satisfy their needs first, and then once the widows are satisfied with the fresh produce, then we sell it, the remainder. And with the money that we get from the produce that we sell at market, then we can buy them blankets and shoes and school supplies and clothes and things like that they need. And if they need to go to the doctor, then we can pay for their doctor's visit, dentist visits, and so forth. And so this God's Widow's Farm produces all of that. We're supporting about 1,200 widows a month, plus their children, and it's just absolutely phenomenal what God is doing here, and it's actually beyond belief the type of produce that comes off of this farm, and it's just, and there's no chemicals, no preservatives that goes into anything. It's just absolutely wonderful, and the taste is, again, phenomenal.
God's Widow's Farm is made possible by supporters of the Cubit Foundation. You can help today by visiting cubitfoundation.org and give your gift of hope.